Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Wisdom Within. If you are tuning in via video, you're going to see two guests on my sofa. One is Matthew,
Hello.
and one is my dog Charlie. Say hi. We thought we'd just keep him here because he's just so adorable. Anyways, so today we are going to be having a conversation with Matthew about his life and his story and what he does and who he is, which is so exciting because we met not so long ago
Yeah,
and now we're running an event together and we're so excited. We've just been planning it here at my house today and we were like, let's just do a little podcast while we're here.
exactly.
So, yeah, I'm so excited for you all to hear his story and his journey. And yeah, maybe you can just start by talking about where your spiritual journey began.
I'd say my spiritual journey began at a very young age. I've always been very intuitive, and I connected with God and the universe at a really young age. Like I want to say around 6 or 7 did I start realizing, hmm, there's something else going on here. I so yeah, I grew up in a very conservative religious community, and having that like a little bit of a religious foundation also kind of showed me that like okay, spirituality is important. But I also always kind of had a very intuitive, deeper connection that I trusted. And my spiritual journey kind of unfolded as I grew older and started questioning things and really trusting that inner sense of wisdom and authority. And yeah, it's kind of led me to where I am today, where my spirituality is probably one of my favorite things about me. And it pretty much guides every aspect of my life.
Amazing. Well, I want to dive deeper into your journey with religion because you grew up in, as you said, Orthodox home, but maybe you want to dive a bit more into that religious community that you were in.
Yeah, so I grew up Seventh day Adventist. So what that means is essentially if you took like Judaism and Southern Baptist and you mix it together, you would probably get something like Seventh day Adventist, where we're very much about um, like keeping the Sabbath and obeying like the laws within the Bible, but also like believing in Christ and evangelical like Christianity. What makes Adventism unique though is there's a lot of focus on end times prophecy, revelation, and I've always found that stuff interesting. But in the community that I grew up in, I prioritized very much learning more, finding the truth, gaining more wisdom, gaining more insight and understanding. And this was a challenge for me because, so growing up, I believed that the Bible was the ultimate authority over
Yeah.
spirituality. And anything outside of the Bible was either a distraction, a deception, or it was irrelevant. So we always had to go back to the Bible. And the challenge I had was sometimes my inner sense of wisdom, my intuition, and my inner authority would say, this isn't right. Pay attention. There's something missing here. And the process for me was as I was struggling with knowing what was true and what was right in a very intuitive way, like knowing the truth within your bones,
Mhm.
having to kind of balance this, knowing that. So I struggled a lot with my sexuality and what that meant in terms of, okay, I value my spirituality and I value my relationship with God, but also in this religious community, my sexuality wasn't something that could be accepted or appreciated. And so for a long time, I had this huge war within myself of my faith, my spirituality, and what my
Mm.
community was telling me was the truth, and then what my intuition was leading me to understand and what I knew was right for myself. And so basically, my journey started with a lot of fear and a lot of shame. It was the energy of, I just want to be seen and accepted by God. And I felt like I needed to change or fix myself in order to do that. And when I asked spiritual teachers or religious teachers, about my sexuality, I wasn't often given very supportive answers. And the process for me was recognizing that the only way we can actually connect with God and the universe is to be radically honest with ourselves.
Mm.
And so for me, my journey has become a process of unlearning and of remembering. And the more I lean into that, the more I commit to radical honesty with myself and I appreciate and accept all parts within myself, more wisdom from God and the universe is revealed to me. And
Wow.
it's a process of continuously dying and rebirthing new versions of myself.
Beautiful. Well, thanks for sharing that, and thank you for honoring your truth because, I can't even imagine what that's like to be living in that level of fear and shame as well, and keeping that inside. And so, I don't know, for anyone who feels like they're facing that to whatever degree, what do you think the power of honesty is? Honesty with yourself.
In my experience, if you're not willing to be completely honest with yourself about who you are and what you're experiencing, then you're choosing to stay in a self imposed prison. You can't live an authentic, honest life and expect relationships and a life to mirror back to you the richness of everything that life has to offer.
I agree. I think radical honesty kind of blends or almost unifies you because you kind of stop living in separation from the external and the internal.
Mm.
So, given your experience and where your spiritual journey began, like where are you now? Like, what do you do with it?
I've taken the lessons that I've learned in terms of not only expanding more into my most truthful, honest, empowered, capable self, but embracing the mystery of God and the universe has shown me that one, remembering that the foundation of wisdom is accepting that we know nothing. So if you have all these rigid beliefs and conclusions about God and the universe and how the world works, essentially you're choosing to feel smart over choosing to embrace the mystery of the universe. And if you're choosing to feel smart at the sake of wisdom, then are you actually smart? Like,
Mm,
are you just choosing to deceive yourself at that point? And so, remembering that the foundation of wisdom is to accept that we know nothing, it's with that curiosity while also being committed to radical honesty within myself that I use to guide me. In my experience when I was growing up, I realized that my connection with God was really strong as a child. Like I intuitively could connect with God and I could feel his presence like almost every day. Um, and as I grew older, I had a spiritual experience when I was about 10 years old that like really solidified that the spiritual world is real. And then as I grew older and I started realizing my sexuality and oh shoot, this is a part of me that I'm not allowed to accept. There's fear and there's shame that I repressed this part of me so much that when I first came out, my first words were, I'm gay and I hate it. That's how much I repressed this part of myself.
mm,
And as I accepted that part of myself and I started being curious about a God who would accept me regardless, what I found was that the relationship with God that I had as a child was now coming back in a way that felt much more authentic and empowering and supportive rather than what I was doing before, which was trying to shrink myself or fix
mm,
myself or find ways to make myself not only acceptable to God, but to everyone else in my experience.
mm,
And so now my whole approach to life is radical honesty, radical responsibility, trusting that God in the universe is always pointing you back to you. And it's a process of expanding your self awareness, accepting yourself for who you are right here, right now, and then offering yourself appreciation for having the human experience and all of what that looks like. And as I've shifted away from thinking I had everything figured out and having all these conclusions about God, the universe, and religion, the more I open up and embrace the mystery, one, my connection with God, I feel has strengthened so much more. but I feel like I'm expanding rather than shrinking. And to
Mm,
me, I think that's the fundamental question that you need to ask yourself is, am I growing into myself or am I shrinking myself?
wow. Yeah, exactly. I would like to hear more about that experience you had when you were 10.
That's a fun one. So what happened was, like I said, I grew up in a very religious community, and anything outside of that perspective was automatically demons. Anything outside of the Adventist or Christian perspective was feared, but very much discouraged. When I was 10, I had this experience where I felt like I could feel the energies in my house. I could feel spirits in my house. And I wouldn't sleep in my room. I swear my room was haunted. And I was like, nope, I ain't doing it. And it caused a lot of frustration. My dad wasn't happy. He didn't fully understand what was happening. But eventually, I just started sleeping in the living room and I would sleep on the couch. And I was like, nope, I am not going in my room. That's not happening. Um, and essentially, what happened was I was still very sensitive to the energies in my house. Like I felt that there was spirits or energies or something going on. And one night, I was trying to fall asleep and I couldn't because I could sense that there was a presence. And it terrified me because growing up, it was demon, right? It had to be a demon. There was no other option. Ghosts, anything like that, were demons.
Yeah, and I also
Mm,
think more broadly in society, we're taught to fear that as well. Like, maybe not from a religious perspective, but I think there is a lot of fear of like spirits, ghosts,
mhm.
even how they're made in like horror movies. And,
Yeah.
a lot of us fear the dark and fear the night. And I know I, as a child, would have massive sleep issues. And I think we're taught to fear the darkness in the night because that's when the veil gets thinned.
And it was interesting because it was at 3 a.m. and I couldn't sleep. It was 3 a.m. It was about this time of year. It would have been end of October, beginning of November. And I shut my eyes to try and fall asleep, and I couldn't fall asleep. And then I had the TV on. It was an infomercial to the Magic Bullet Blender. I remember that as clear as day. So I could hear the TV on. I could listen to it, and it was at the part where it was, 3 easy payments of like 29.99. Get your Magic Bullet Blender. And so I was very consciously aware of like what was in my experience. So I shut my eyes, trying to fall asleep, and then I could feel the presence in the room, and I was like, nope, not shutting my eyes. And then I tried to open my eyes again, and I couldn't. And I was like, what? And then I tried to move my body. I tried to move my arm, and it took all of my strength to just barely move my arm. And then the next thing I know is I feel two hands touching me on my leg and one on my shoulder. And I was freaking out. I was like, Jesus, 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 like, this ain't happening. Demons, they're here. No. And I was freaking out. I was like, Jesus, you need to come get me now. And I could feel as I was doing it, like the energy in the room was like changing. And finally, I was like, enough. I'm done. Jesus, help me now. And I like jumped out and ran to my dad's room and I told him what happened. And I remember the next day thinking to myself, Matthew, you're going to try and convince yourself that didn't happen. But you know what you felt. You felt those hands touching you. You know that your experience, like, what your experiences was. Do not try and convince yourself that wasn't the truth.
Mm.
And so having that experience at 10 years old and thinking, shoot, okay, I was just attacked by demons. That must mean something. And so it kind of developed this persona of like, hmm, I must be so powerful spiritually that the devil sees me as a threat and he's sending demons to attack me. And it created this whole persona of I must be God's chosen warrior. God gives his toughest battles to his strongest warriors. And so having that experience, and then that kind of became my identity was, wow, God must really love me and see how powerful I am to have that, like for me to have this experience and for the devil to like come and attack me. And then having that perspective as I was 10, and then when puberty started and I realized, "Ooh, I might be gay." it caused this huge internal war within myself where I was like, nah, this is just something the devil put in my experience so that, he can take me away from God. And
Mm.
it caused this huge internal war. And I didn't feel like I could have anyone to talk to about it. I felt so much fear and shame. And I remember going to God saying, don't worry, I'm never going to give in to this. I am so committed to truth and love and being committed to being, a spiritual, but like somebody who's committed to living life for God. And that was how I orientated myself. And so growing up, I like most of my teenage years, it was that intense fear and shame of I needed to fix this core part of me because this core part of me was wrong. And that was my experience until I was about 17. And eventually, so growing up, I felt very connected to God. And then as I was wrestling with this and as I was experiencing this in my teenage years, my relationship with God just got weaker and weaker, and I couldn't feel his presence. And I was getting mad. I was saying, God, I'm doing everything I can. I'm going to Bible studies. I'm going to church. Like, I'm praying. I'm literally doing everything. Why can't I feel your presence again? And I was getting so frustrated and I got very spiritually depressed. And eventually I reached a point, and there's irony here and I love it. But I remember being so mad at God, and I remember praying and saying, you know what? If you don't show your presence again to me, I am going to be an atheist. And so yeah, I gave God a deadline. I was like, I literally said, if you don't show up again, if I don't feel your presence within 2 weeks, I am an atheist. And that time came and went, didn't feel anything. And I was like, all right, God, I am done. And that lasted like 2 weeks. And it was during that phase where I was like, okay, well, if I'm an atheist now, maybe I should probably start accepting this part of myself.
Mm.
Um, and so that's when I was like, okay, I accept that I'm gay. Like I stopped like trying to convince myself that it would go away or that it was just a phase or something. It was that point when I was 17 where I was like, all right, this is here. And so I went to speak to my pastor, and thankfully this pastor was LGBT affirming and he was very kind and caring, so I trusted him. And my first words were, I'm gay and I hate it. And I was expecting to feel that like relief or like that weight off your shoulders, and I didn't feel that. I was angry. I was angry at God. I was angry at the universe.
Mm.
And from that experience, after finally being honest with myself, I could feel God's little nudges saying, hey, like, you're not an atheist. Stop trying. Like,
Mm.
there's a spiritual world. Like, let's chat. And so then I started exploring more about LGBT affirming theology, and I started really getting curious about that. And the more I started accepting and being radically honest with this part of myself, that relationship I had with God became stronger and stronger.
Mm.
And I realized, one, if you're not willing to be radically honest with yourself, then you are just deceiving yourself. But two, if we're made in the image of God, and many different traditions teach this, that we are a piece of the divinity, if we accept this within ourselves, then that means that the truth of who we really are is good, is beautiful, is empowered and capable, and like there's nothing wrong with the core being of who you are because you are made in the image of the divine. And so that's where I kind of shifted and started orientating towards myself. But I still had a lot of trauma and fear and stuff that I needed to unpack. But yeah.
Mm. Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing that story. It's so inspiring. And so, yeah, what do you provide for people now? Like, what does your work look like?
My work now, what I aim to do is show them that at the core of their being, they are the creator of their experience. I follow the principle of as within, so without. And as I've connected with spiritual principles within myself and I've applied them within myself, I see them proven true and true again. And so one of those principles being as within, so without is that your external world is a reflection of your internal world.
Yeah.
And so I show people, hey, this is the invitation that God or the universe is giving you. This is the part of you that you're not willing to see or accept. And that part of you has the key that you need in order to move forward into who you truly are. What I like to do is when we have that internal war within ourselves, when there's two parts of us that are really opposed, bringing them together. The concept of alchemy is taking two opposites and creating gold, right? It's taking base metal and turning that into gold, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so my work is to take fear and shame and grief and all these emotions that are dense and heavy and transmute them into love, joy, and appreciation. And it's by following these deeply profound spiritual principles that not only have I applied within myself, and I've seen how much I've grown and shifted and expanded. And now I'm living a life where it's fun and I'm like playful with God in the universe rather than like, oh my God, I need to do more inner work.
Yeah.
My intention and my work now is to help you connect with who you truly are and letting that be fun and playful along the way.
I love that. I think play is so important. We were just talking about this earlier, how you get to dance, you get to experience the bliss in life. It's literally your birthright. And so, yeah, I'm so excited to have you here. I'm so excited for our event. And yeah, just thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
You too. Thank you so much for being here. I just wanted to let you know that I'm currently offering free one-to-one connection calls, which are 30 minutes and is a space for you to learn more about working with me one-to-one, and we can both explore how I can help you and serve you. And also, you'll be able to ask any questions about my upcoming retreat in France and Iceland in 2025. If you want more information on booking this or on the retreats, check out the show notes and also follow me on Instagram to stay up to date. If you loved this episode, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple or Spotify. Thank you so much for all your support, and I'm sending so much love. Have a beautiful day. Bye.